last week we looked at Jesus' preparation going to go help Lazarus. His sisters, Mary and Martha, sent word. They said, our brother's sick and we need your help, Lord. And he waited a few days and then came to help Lazarus. By then, Lazarus had died. So tonight we're going to look at the miracle itself. And I know you guys like it whenever you can act out the parts in the story, so I have a few scripts. If I can get a Mary and Martha here in just a minute. Let me start with a few questions. Who are we? What is wrong with the world? And what can make it right? Those are questions that everyone, if you're Christian or not Christian, people wrestle with those questions. You need to have some kind of answer, even if you don't know if it's the true answer or not, for people who are not Christians. You have to have some sort of answer to those questions just to live day by day. So we're going to look at some of those questions tonight. But first, I do need a Mary, a Martha, and a Jesus. And I also have the verses. Look at all these verses. We're not going to read all these words because I looked at this is the story of Lazarus getting raised from the dead. I'm like, this is way too much to read in one night. So we're just going to act it out, but I do want you to have the verses in front of you. You guys have the words to the story from the Bible. You have the verses in front of you. And I want you to kind of follow along if you can, or you can watch them. I'm going to narrate a little bit of it because I don't want to miss the non-dialogue parts of the story. So let me kind of set it up. Their brother has died. Here's Jesus. He's arrived, but the brother's already dead. Lazarus has died. So Martha here is going to come to Jesus, and I'll just read. I'll set it up for you. Yes. Well, Lazarus isn't doing too much right now. I don't need Lazarus for this part, but I can use you later. Yeah. You guys, the audience, I want you to join in. Whenever you see the parts that I grayed out on there, you guys can read those lines, but those are come at the very end.
Yeah.
So, okay. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Take it away, Martha.
Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, God, will you give you whatever you ask?
Your brother will rise again.
I know he will rise again in the
Resurrection
at the last day.
I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe in this?
Yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world.
After she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside.
The teacher is here and is asking for you.
When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. So when the Jews who had been with Mary in the house comforting her noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to mourn there. And when Mary reached the place where Jesus was, she saw him and she fell at his feet.
Lord, if you hadn't been here, my brother would not have died.
Where have you laid him?
And then it says Jesus wept. And then the Jews said, everyone say loved again. And then some said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind have kept this man from dying? All right, thanks, guys.
We're done.
You can sit down for now. There's a little bit more to the story, but we'll save that for the end. Let me bring you back to one part of that story where Martha says, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. And she says, but I know that God will give you whatever you ask again. And he said, your brother will rise again. She says, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. She believed, and it was true, that there would be a day when everyone who had died would come back. Kind of like how we say today, when someone dies, we know that you're in heaven, so we'll see you again in heaven. For the people who have been a Christian and trusted God. We say that even today. But she's thinking about when she'll see her brother again. Someday in the future, the resurrection at the last day, the judgment day. And Jesus gives her, he's kind of strong. He's kind of like her superhero right here. He says, I am the resurrection and the life. He's saying that you don't have to wait to see your brother. I'm the life right here. I'm the source of life, and I can give your brother life right now. That's what he's trying to tell her. She's coming to him and she's like, Jesus, you're too late. Like, my brother's already dead. I want you to get here in time, but you're not here in time. And he's saying, hey, whenever I show up, it's always perfect timing. Like, Jesus' time is always perfect. You might think it's too late. It kind of reminds me of that one line on Lord of the Rings where Gandalf is they're like, Gandalf, you're late. And he says, no, whenever a wizard shows up, he's always right whenever he expects to be there. You guys know what part I'm talking about. It kind of reminded me of that. He says, a wizard never arrives late or early, or he's always precisely on time. Or I remember on the show Smallville, which was about Superman, I remember they said about Superman one time, he's not always there when you want him, he's always there when you need him. And Jesus is kind of like being to Martha this strong protector kind of person. He's saying, I'm here right now, I'm always on time, you don't have to worry about anything. And right now her heart's in despair, but he says you don't have to despair right now. And he's being strong and godlike, just like we would expect Jesus to be. But then look again at this verse where Mary comes to him. And she says, Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. But this time, Jesus had a totally different response. I want you to look at these parts again, where when Martha came to Jesus, she said, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. And he says, your brother will rise again. But then just a few verses later, it says, Mary fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. This time, what does Jesus do? Yeah. It says he wept. You guys know about the Jesus wept verse, right? It's kind of odd because both sisters said the exact same thing to Jesus, word for word. See right there, every single word of that is the same. They both said the exact same thing. They're probably thinking this whole time, their brother's dead, and they're thinking, I was expecting Jesus to come save me, and he never showed up. That's probably what they were thinking that whole time. And they both come to him with the same thing, word for word, but he gives totally different responses. I think that's really interesting. Emily has this really uncanny ability that she can know exactly what I'm going to say. Sometimes she can have our whole conversation. She can have a whole argument. I don't even have to say a word. She says my part, and then she says her part, and she says my part. And sometimes I want to be like, hey, I wouldn't say that, but she's right 90% of the time. So it's really amazing. But when you get to know somebody really well, you can kind of know what they're going to say, before they even say it. I kind of wish I could know what Jesus was going to say. I wish I could get so close to Jesus that whenever I wondered about something, I think, what would Jesus think of this? And I'm so close to Jesus that I know what Jesus would think of it. I want to be that close where I could have Jesus' mind on everything. But Jesus is so big that he always says the right thing. He always says the most perfect thing. And he always knows what to say. He comes to Mary, or Martha, and he gives Martha a very strong answer. I am the resurrection. I am the life. You don't have to worry about anything. And then he comes to Mary, and Mary's just broken, and his response to her is he just gets broken with her. He just gets down and cries with her. In fact, that verse, Jesus wept. Everyone knows that Jesus wept is the shortest verse in the Bible. Or if you didn't know that, you know it now. Jesus wept, 2 words. I was kind of curious, it's John 11:35. Lots of people know Jesus wept. They don't know why Jesus wept. So this is the story where that comes in. And I was kind of curious, what the different translations, how they did that verse. The NIV, it just says Jesus wept. Everyone knows that. King James Version, Jesus wept. New King James Version, Jesus wept. Holman Christian Standard Bible, Jesus wept. English Standard Version, Jesus wept. And I looked at the Tree of Life Jewish Bible, and it says Yeshua wept. So it finally kind of changed it up. And then after that, I looked at the New Living Translation, and it said, then Jesus wept. I was like, they kind of changed it up. They're adding in another word. And the Spanish Bible, it says Jesus lloró, but it's still Jesus wept. The Amplified Bible makes everything longer. If you ever looked at Amplified Bible, it always adds in 1,200 words in every verse. It's still just Jesus wept. Or if you look at the Message Bible, Jesus wept and stuff. But anyway, why did Jesus weep? I think that's the most important question in this story, because Jesus is God. He's God's representative on earth. He's God pretty much same as God, made of the same stuff. He's God and man. And we wouldn't expect God to be crying about stuff. Because we always think of God as a tough guy, right? What would bug God? But it says here Jesus wept. And so let's talk about why he would do that. One reason, I got it up here, Jesus doesn't like death. Some people will say, why would a good God create a world where there's evil and suffering and pain and stuff that makes us cry and stuff that we hate? Why would God make a world like that? And the answer to that question is God didn't make a world like that. Sin turned the world like that, but that's not the way that God wanted the world to be. So whenever we see Jesus weeping, death upsets him because that's not part of his plan. He doesn't want people to die. Yes, Philip? Right? That started the sin. We've all continued the problem of sin. So, but that was the first part where, yeah, he said, the day that you eat of that, you'll surely die. They brought death into the world through that. But anyway, God does not like death. So I think that's one reason that he was crying here. And like I said earlier, we'll tell people at funerals, we'll see that person again. You'll see that person again in heaven someday. But even Jesus knew that, and he was still affected by death. So whenever we say that, don't think it means, so, you're going to see your grandma again someday in heaven, so just get over it for right now. Just tough it out. That's not the attitude that anyone should have. I don't think you should take it that way. Even Jesus got upset whenever people died. He knew he'd see Lazarus again one way or the other, but remember when John the Baptist died, it said that Jesus heard, and that was Jesus' cousin. When he heard that John the Baptist died, Jesus had to get away for a while and be like, that he went off and wept alone because it shook him up so bad. So that's actually brings me to the next point. There's a really human side of Jesus. Jesus was God and man. The Bible says that lots of times. And this story really shows it, because when he comes to Martha, gives the answer you'd expect God to give. I'm the resurrection and the life. You don't have anything to worry about. Peace be with you. But then he comes to Mary, and he says, he just breaks down and cries with her. He had a God side and a human side to him. He's showing both of those things throughout this story. Kind of like Superman. You guys know I've got to bring Superman into it as much as I can. He's fully Superman, but he's also fully Clark Kent, right? He's not 50% Clark, 50% Superman. He's 100% both. That's how you can kind of be two things. Cody can be 100% father, 100% rent-a-cop, security guard. He can be 100% both things. So God is not, or Jesus is not 50% God, 50%. I stole that from Malik. I don't. Jesus is not 50% God, 50% man. He's fully God and fully man. So that's why Jesus can be strong one minute and weak in tears the next. He's not like a robot. He's showing both sides of who he is. And in fact, I think this story it's one of those stories that you can believe that the Bible is true. People will try to say that the Bible is made up and that you can't trust it. If you were making up a story like this, you wouldn't have people saying the exact same thing to Jesus twice in a row like that and getting two completely different answers. That would be like, dude, you're making an inconsistent character if you're writing a story. But this is showing that you wouldn't make a story up like this. It's showing that Jesus knows exactly what each person needs. When he comes to Martha, she needs a dose of truth and encouragement. Whenever he comes to Mary, she needs tears and sympathy. She needs someone just to be there and cry with her. Sometimes people, when they're going through something tough, they don't need just a bunch of answers, but they just need someone to sit with them and help them through that. That's part of what when people are going through suffering, emotional suffering or whatever. They don't always just need you to fix the problem, but they just need someone to be with them. And so Jesus knows what Martha needs. He knows what Mary needs. And he always knows the perfect thing to say. That's kind of what I was touching on earlier. I read a quote this week, and it said, "Nobody has discovered the word Jesus ought to have said." And what they mean is, no one ever looks at Jesus in the Bible and says, well, I think Jesus could have handled it better if he said this or if he did that. Jesus always does the perfect thing. He always says the perfect thing. He has the perfect thing ready for every person. So I started this sermon here. I asked a question, what makes us right again? And that was kind of a misleading question. It's not a what makes us right again, it's a who makes us right again. Let me read the end of that story. and then we'll wrap it up tonight. Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. "Take away the stone," he said. "But Lord," Martha said, the sister of the dead man, "by this time there's a bad odor, for he has been there for 4 days." Oh yeah, you were going to be Lazarus, weren't you, Jonathan? You want to lay down on the floor? Yeah. I said bad odor and I remembered. Yeah. Probably, how about the back? I don't know, the face might be funnier. I would think his legs, I don't know, I just think his legs would be straight. That kind of looks like you're napping. Yeah, there you go. Are you comfortable? Good. Okay, so Martha says, by this time there's a bad odor, and he's been there for 4 days. Or if you look at the King James Version, all Martha says is, he stinketh, which I think is kind of funny. Stinketh. Everyone say, Jonathan, you stinketh. Okay. Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone, and Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you've heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." And when he'd said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out. Lazarus, come out." And the dead man came out. It said that he had strips of linen and cloth around his face, so you're like a mummy. I guess you can try to find your way back to your seat. There you go. I wonder. No, I think he was preserved. Are you all right, Jonathan? Can you get up? This reminds me of something I saw over the weekend. We went out to the Life Choices banquet, and they had like balloons, animals and stuff, and someone had made this balloon sword, but it had blown away, so I stole it because I thought, well, no one's going to need this. So I picked it up, and I took the balloon sword and I stabbed Ben in the back with it, and just in total commitment, Ben like straightens up and like does a face plant right there on the sidewalk. And like everyone at Carousel Park turned and looked at us, and this guy's like, "Is he okay?" And everyone around us was like laughing. It was just beautiful because he just like you heard it, like he had this like can of pop in his hand, and when it hit the ground, it just like exploded up and like popped just like a fountain. But I was gonna save that story for a sermon on commitment, but then I saw Jonathan go down right then. And, yeah. Okay, let's go back to the story. No, not yet. Let's give God our attention for just like 5 more minutes, because I do want you to get something out of this. They took away the stone. Oh wait, I'm past that part. Okay, the dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped in strips of linen with cloth around his face, and Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." When I got to one part in that story, and you have it here in front of you too, verse 43, Jesus called out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." And the Greek translation, when it says he bellowed, it says he bellowed with anger. And none of the English versions probably give you that little tidbit, but it says he bellowed with anger. So when Jesus was calling Lazarus out, he was angry, he was mad. And what does it mean whenever Jesus is mad, doing this miracle, bringing him out? Why would he be upset about it like that? Or he's not mad at the family. I think he's mad at sin. I think that's what's really got him ticked off. We know that God doesn't like evil. People will say, if God doesn't like evil so much, why doesn't he just like swoop down and, he's God, snap his fingers, get rid of all the evil and suffering, get rid of all the evil in the world, so that people aren't having to deal with that anymore. People say, why doesn't God just do that? Because God can do anything, right? Do you believe God can do anything? Do you believe that God could just snap his fingers and make all the evil go away? No? Well, doesn't even have to snap his fingers, but do you think he could? Do you think God could just wipe it all away really quick? 2 reasons why God doesn't do that. One, there is going to be a day where God wipes away all evil and judgment. That day is coming. He's not doing it right now. But like Martha said, the resurrection at the last day. Someday that is going to be a judgment day where all that's taken care of. But there's another reason. The evil is inside of all of us too. We've all done evil stuff. And so if God was just going to snap his fingers and get rid of all the evil, he'd have to get rid of us because it's a part of us. We're all sinners. So it's really a good thing that God doesn't just like wipe it all away like that. He gives everyone a chance through Jesus. That's God's plan. And so Jesus came to defeat evil. He didn't come to battle evil like with a sword. He just came and he surrendered. And remember last week whenever I said that this story of Lazarus, it kicks off the chain of events. This is when he raises Lazarus, the Jewish leaders say, okay, now we're going to have to kill this Jesus guy because he's causing so much trouble. He's getting too many followers. He's going to be dangerous. So the Jewish leaders decide, okay, we're going to have to kill him. And after this, he goes to the cross not long after this. This was probably his last big miracle. I think that's why he's angry, because he knows he knows this is coming. He set this up ahead of time, and he knows that if he's going to get Lazarus out of the grave, he's going to be putting himself into the grave. He's just going to be doing a switch. And that's why he doesn't come up to the tomb with a smile. If I was going to raise someone from the dead, I'd be excited. I'd be like, ooh, watch this, this trick I'm going to do. Not that it's a magic trick, but like, watch this power that's going to come forth from me. I would be excited probably, but Jesus comes up there with tears on his cheeks. He's not looking forward to this. And so, hey, Mike, if you want to just start a song real quick, I just want you guys to take a minute. This is not a sermon where I'm just going to say, go out and do this. You need to do this better. You need to fix this part of your life. That's not what this is about. And I don't think it should be about that. I want you guys to just realize what Jesus has done for us already. I just want you to behold the Son of God and how he loves every single one of us. And so I just want you guys to take 2 minutes. I think we can give God 2 minutes. We've got more than 2 minutes before 8. So take 2 minutes, take 5, 10, whatever you want to do. But just take a few minutes right now, as long as you want. And then I'll pray here in a few minutes too and dismiss us. But just tell God that you're thankful for what he's done for us. That he brought Lazarus out of the grave and put himself in it. He went to the cross to die for our sins. Thank him that he's patient with us. When I said the evil's inside of us, he didn't just snap his fingers and do away with all of us, but he made a plan to take care of our sins so that we can come into him and not have that on our record. I just want us to take a few minutes right now and just tell God thank you. Just tell him how much you appreciate him.